Hey, today on the channel we've got a guest post from Jesse talking about 8 mistakes to avoid when working in Fusion 360. Here we go.
The first few mistakes we're going to cover today regard the efficiency of modeling. The first one is always use revolves instead of extrudes when you can. For example, if you want to make a wedding cake, one way to do it is to extrude that guy out, make another sketch. Extrude that out, so on and so forth. Most likely not modeling a wedding cake, but this is really handy when you're dealing with bearings, washers. So instead of doing this, you see in our timeline we have 6 different things. We can just make a sketch, make a line, go through, make our wedding cake shape, and then quickly revolve that around our center. There you have it, quick, simple wedding cake. The next mistake we're going to cover is creating an extrude with a sketch versus without a sketch. Something that's really powerful that Fusion does is instead of, let's say I want to go and extend this out, I can go in here and create a sketch, project this circle out. So I'm clicking P, projecting that circle out, and then going ahead and extruding this further. That's one way to do it. But if you notice, I have a sketch there and a feature. But the better way to do it is to just go ahead and extrude the face. Or fillet, sorry, and then you make it, let's say, 1/2 inch. And when you start dealing with a lot of edges, so let's say we want to do every single one of these edges here, it takes, it doesn't take a lot of time, but it takes a bit of time and aiming to get all these lines. A better way to do that is just click on the surfaces. So you just need to click on that surface, you need to click on that surface, you need to click on that line and that line. And instead of having to do 8 clicks or 6 clicks, you only have to do 4. The fourth mistake we're going to cover is with regards to mirroring. So let's say we have another object here. Let's say we have another revolved object even. Let's make it a bit more complicated this time. So now we have our 2 objects. And a common mistake is to, when you're in the middle of doing a complicated project, to say, okay, I have to get this one mirrored across this plane, so let's do that. And then you go about, do your modeling, and then say, oh wait, I have to mirror this one across this plane as well. And sure, that might get you to where you want to be. It might seem obvious, but the much more efficient way to do it is to just mirror both at the same time. And this is super obvious in this example, but when you get to more complex things with different features, then it becomes much less obvious. When do you, and also regards to mirrors, when do you pattern inside a sketch and when do you pattern outside a sketch? And it's a great question because let's say I have this and I want to have 8 of them. Let's go pattern, circular pattern, axis. Let's make it 7. So that's one way to do those holes. But we're all about simplicity. So if you see here in our tree, we have 3 different items. The rule of thumb is if you're dealing with one object, a single object like we have here, do the patterns in this sketch. If you're dealing with multiple objects, do the patterns in the feature. So, for example, we're going to circular pattern this guy around our center, make 7 of them. Great. Now we can rectangular pattern the body in the way we want. So we don't want to do the rectangular pattern in the feature, we want to do the rectangular pattern in the body because you're balancing overcomplicating the sketch and overcomplicating your timeline. Doing these 7 holes in your sketch is super simple. You don't have a lot of dimensions going around, but let's say rectangular pattern this guy like what we had, but you do it in a sketch, Then you're dealing with a bunch more lines, a much more complicated sketch, especially when you're involving dimensions and parameters and all that. Then it gets much more complicated. The sixth mistake we're going to cover today involves extrudes and the two object versus two distance. So when you're creating an extrude, you see here I have the option to extent, the extents. I can either do a distance, two object, or all. You can't do an extrude all with a new body because then it's just going on to infinity. You can, however, do a distance. So let's just make that 3 inches, right? And now I have this other plane here where I'll do another sketch. And this one I want a little rod coming off of the box. So now I have this circle and I want to extrude it to this box. So let's click on the box, and that's what's really nice about Fusion. You just click and it automatically sets the distance to negative 5.462. So it just, does that for you. There's no messing around with it. You press OK, and then great, you have your design. But the tricky part is when you're trying to make a design modular, you really never want to use that command, the clicking distance command, and I'll explain why. When you go back here and you want to change the size of this box, click there, and then look. It still goes that same distance, but it doesn't go to that box. So a workaround is instead of extent distance, you go to object and you click there. And this really, I always use to object. It's very rare that I use extent when I'm trying to bring one box to another because there's just no point to. It's much easier to, but there's no point to in the long run. When you're trying to edit the design and you're trying to change a dimension, then it is really difficult to make it a modular design. So now it's stuck there. The second to last mistake we're going to cover here today is one of the most important ones. It is parameters. And parameters sound scary and complex, but really they're very simple. So you can find parameters. Our goal today is to make a box that is double the width is double the length. So you can find parameters under modify, change parameters, and I already have a parameter here. You can just add a parameter here, and you can change the unit. So this one, the unit is inches, so the length is going to be 5 inches. This one is going to be degrees. So the reason why I can't have a inch length in the degree is because it's inches, not degrees. So the way to do that is this is really length inches, and you have to divide that by 1 inch to get to cancel out the inches and end with a degree. As you can see here, we have this is the name of the variable, the unit, the expression, so what we put in, and the value. So this is without the unit. So let's just make that 5 for now. Great, so now we have our two parameters. Let's go in here, and right now we're just going to type in length. Great. And here, we can type in length times 2, because we want the width to be double the length. Our extrude, it's going to be length as well, because we want it to be 5 inches, and our taper angle is going to be taper angle, the one that we decided on. Great. So that's our box. And actually, just to give us a sense of size, we're gonna make the distance 10. So now that's our tapered box. Now we can go back to change parameters. So for length, instead of 5, why don't we change it to 20? So now the length is 20, the width is 40, and the taper angle is 40 as well. And the height is still 10. The last mistake we're going to cover today is the biggest. When you're designing something and you're scrolling through here trying to find whichever one you want, you go here. You're trying to find whichever one you want, whatever. It takes a lot of time. The easiest way to do it is just click S and you have your search command. Here are the really easy ones, but let's say we want to do a center point slot. Go right here. There's no need to go using your mouse. It's all on the keyboard.